Welcome. Excuse me, to another episode 456 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, usual cast of characters: Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from Four Boxing News, and the Inscriber. He'll join the show shortly. Uh, but along with Gail and Daniel, we have making a return appearance to the show, Corey, contributor for ThreeKingsBoxing.com. What's going on, lady and gent?
Doing good. How you doing?
Glad to have you back, Corey. It was a great weekend of fights. No matter what you were attending or watching, you were set.
Yeah, things were transpiring rather quickly, back to back. Um, for those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, etc. Talking all things boxing. The motto is: when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information regarding the show, please go to the site, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4p.boxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find links to check out everything Pound for Pound Boxing Report related on social media, links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Twitter, IG page. Um, if you wish to donate, let donation be your best nation. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Wouldn't matter to us if it's $1, $2, $5, whatever you wish to contribute. It'll help the overall production behind the scenes. Last but certainly not least, from my fellow fitness enthusiasts, and I will get my workout in after this recording. Please check out the link to Body, formerly known as Beach Body On Demand, programs for any suitable interest and goals. If you're looking for a boxing specific program on, check out Body and 10 rounds, and that is 10 rounds is a 6-week program. Um, 3 days a week you do boxing based cardio, 2 days a week you do um, weightlifting, resistance work. The workouts are not that long, um, usually in the 40-45 minute range. So it's not super long. You can get through it. It's not too stressful. It'll get you in some decent shape. At the very least, take advantage of the 2-week trial, the 14-day trial that runs throughout the year. And as for 14 days, you get free access to any and all and upcoming programs on Pound for Pound Boxer Report. Give a shout out to Emma, who's watching live. Let's get things going by recapping what turned out to be a wild weekend um, of fights. Let's go to Las Vegas, Gail, and you was at this card covering it for nyfights.com. The main event was Serhii Bohachuk uh, defending what was the WBC interim junior middleweight belt against undefeated Vergil Ortiz. I talked about this last weekend. And I said that Bohachuk uh, had the very distinct possibility of giving Ortiz all that he could handle, and boy, was that the case. Put Ortiz down twice, um, back and forth, war, candidate for fight of the year. Every time it seemed as if Ortiz had some semblance of advantage, Bohachuk would come storming back. He was right there to the end at the bell. The Mandalay Bay crowd in Las Vegas, roaring approval of both men. Ortiz ended up getting the decision, but a lot of people on boxing social media and on various message boards felt that Bohachuk could very well have earned the decision. Ortiz is talking about fighting the winner of Sebastian Fundora and Spence. That fight is going to happen in October. But for me, Gail, I want to see Bohachuk and Ortiz run it right back. That was a terrific fight. And Bohachuk, he deserves, as far as I'm concerned, to fight to his chance at get back. I want to see them do it again.
Well, before I even comment about the fight, if you don't think Serhii Bohachuk is the toughest bastard in boxing, if you don't think that he is boxing's Iron Man, you have some serious rethinking to do. You know, if you had asked any of us before the fight, whether two guys with 45 fights and 44 knockouts between them would have gone 12 rounds, you would have said, get the out of here. And that's exactly what it did, to everybody's surprise and everybody's pleasure, because we got to see a good old-fashioned fight. There was no boxing being done. There was no show of tactical excellence. This was just a straight-up banger. And both of the fighters said that's what it was going to be. Ortiz himself said this is a close quarters battle all the way, as long as it lasts. We just simply had no idea it was going to the final bell. It was a back and forth fight. There were two very surprising flash knockdowns by Bohachuk of Ortiz. The first one got missed, and it did appear at first to those of us ringside like it might have been a stumble on Ortiz's part. But the Nevada State Athletic Commission has replay, and the commission decided to replay, take another look at that first round issue, and sure enough, overruled referee Harvey Dock, who is absolutely hands down one of the best referees in boxing right now, and decided, no, that's a knockdown granted to Bohachuk. So everybody quickly, scratched out that first round score on their cards. And then Bohachuk got Ortiz again with another flash knockdown. This time he caught Ortiz, knocked him off balance pretty badly. And although he didn't go all the way to the canvas, he put his two gloves down. Boom, that's a knockdown. Absolutely. Close fight. I did score it for Ortiz by 1 round. I wouldn't have been too unhappy if it had gone the other way. I would have easily seen it a draw, which a lot of my colleagues on Media Row actually had it scored a draw. To say it was a robbery, I really hate bringing out the R word, and I think fans use it too often. Ortiz did throw the harder punches. Ortiz did hurt Bohachuk. In particular, he had him hurt seriously in the 11th round. We thought he was going to get him out of there. Bohachuk has plenty of power, and he's relentless. He just keeps coming. He isn't the sort of one-punch power guy we've always seen in Ortiz Jr. He's the TKO by attrition sort of guy, because he's just, his engine keeps going. Nevertheless, Ortiz Jr. did land more punches and landed them more efficiently. Now, CompuBox stats don't always tell the story of a fight. They certainly don't. But they do illuminate how both guys were operating. And when we look back at it, Ortiz outlanded Bohachuk in 8 of the 12 rounds and did outland him overall. The only category Bohachuk outlanded Ortiz by 8 punches was in the jab category. So, and that's exactly how the fight appeared to the eye. Those who say, well, look at their faces. That is, judges do not score a fight based on how a guy's face looks. We've seen plenty of fighters finish a fight with a broken orbital bone, a busted eye, big cuts, and then they're clearly the winner. So that is sort of a silly thing to say. I do understand, after the effort their man made, why promoter Tom Loeffler and trainer Manny Robles were upset about the decision. They had really hoped their guy had done enough. And Manny Robles, who I've been around a lot over the years here in Southern California, I have never seen Manny so emotional after a fight. He was almost in tears talking about Serhii at the post-fight press conference. Neither fighter appeared after the fight, because the state of Nevada, if they think either guy has taken any sort of damage that needs to get looked at, they have him in an ambulance off to the hospital. And they did not let either of these guys attend the post-fight news conference. They sent him straight off for observation and a good look over. We missed getting to talk to them, but I'm always glad that they do that. So the promoters and trainers stood in for both guys. Loeffler and Robles would love to see this run back. Oscar and Robert Garcia have other things in mind, as you might imagine, especially with Saudi money being dangled. I do think that getting a rematch would be a lot of fun to see. I don't think we need to see it next. I think both guys have lots of options at 154. And even though on the record, one guy lost and one guy won, but other than us boxing heads and those hearing the sound of our voices tonight who are among the hardcore, we knew who Serhii Bohachuk was, and a lot of the Southern Californians certainly know because we've seen him so many times at local cards. But most boxing fans didn't know him very well. They do now, and their opinion of him has surely gone up in that effort. So both guys' stature went up after that fight. The way they went to war, the way they hung in there, the way they looked for ways to get to the other guy, and just couldn't close the show. They both tried so damn hard, but it was damned entertaining. And the fans rose to their feet multiple times during the fight. It was a pro-Ortiz crowd all the way. But in the end, I think all of the fans truly appreciated the efforts of both guys. It was a tremendous fight. And that is the kind of fight that does get a lot of votes at the year-end fight of the year. It'll be right up there with Usyk and Fury, and maybe a couple of other also rans. But I'd say right now it's down to those two.
Indeed. And I'll go to you, Corey. A lot of people who did not know much about Bohachuk, they found out in this fight. And the other side of that is the performance of Ortiz. Now, he's known for having this pressure style and having power in both hands. All of his previous wins before this fight were by knockout, right? But in this contest, for a good chunk of the bout, he was forced to fight backwards. He was forced to do some things that he normally does, that is not forced to do in this fight. And you've heard discussion in by various folks on social media how he would do in a proposed fight against Bud, and coming off of Crawford's win over Madrimov, in which a lot of people felt that Bud was off that night and started throwing around names of folks who could beat him. Ortiz was thrown in there. But based on this performance, can we silence once and for all this notion about Ortiz, how he would fare against Bud? I still want to see the fight. But for those who think that version of Ortiz could beat a Terence Crawford, no.
There's actually a few angles to the Ortiz angle I was thinking about after seeing that fight. The one of the biggest angles I look at is like business wise, you would stay away from Bud after seeing that performance. Bud would provide too many angles. He's clearly the superior boxer, and people are kind of forgetting Ortiz went through an injury and 2 health scares with cutting weight not too long ago. So him having a somewhat, maybe it was an off night, maybe it wasn't. I'm not going to say it necessarily was, because Vergil fought an excellent fight. There's nothing you can take away from him. So I think, and also I think when you're looking at how Oscar would have to look at it, is you're better off taking the winner of the Spence Fundora fight because you have better odds in that fight. And also you're looking at right now with Ryan Garcia's sideline, he's your meal ticket. So I don't think you'll see him unless it's really well paying, I don't think he'll be taking any kind of unnecessary risk. And I think the buzz that would be generated from a Spence versus Fundora fight would put them in a situation where they'd still be able to get a big payday. And it's the type of a fight, because if he fights Spence, if you know the kind of the sparring history of Ortiz and Spence would be heavily favored in that fight if he happens to get past Fundora. You'd still not take that big of a hit. It'd be like, oh, well, Spence is back. He's looking good again. Whereas if you go in any other direction, not so much. So the way I see it, I think they already had discussed this, this possibility before they had the fight, because I think they understood how in tough they were, even though a lot of boxing fans didn't. And even the Vegas odds kind of reflected if you look at where it started and where it ended up, the odds got bet down because there were people that kind of understood like what he kind of was in there with.
And I just want to add to Corey's point, the other reason that Ortiz is far more interested in the winner of the Fundora Spence fight is there's a belt. There's a belt available with the Serhii Bohachuk rematch. Bohachuk doesn't bring anything else to the table other than what Ortiz has already got in his hands.
Yeah, and go ahead, and we'll talk about more about Crawford in a little while. Some news broke this afternoon regarding him. On the undercard, Corey, one of the more impressive fighters of 2024 has been Gabriela Fundora, who's IBF champion at 112 pounds. She defended that belt against Daniela and Serhii, dominated in route to a 10-round win. Didn't lose a round. I mean, in my opinion, in the scorecards reflected that. Right, punished and Serhii. I covered that bout. I covered that bout as well as the Ortiz bout for Three Kings Boxing .com. Please check out Three Kings Boxing, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. You have Corey here, who's a contributor. Jay, Lord Zoe, all contributors as well. Shout out to 2K, who's the man behind Three Kings Boxing. Bo, who you heard numerous times here on Three Kings, senior writer, head of media relations, as well as Bakari, fellow senior writer. I'm a senior writer. Shout out to Red as well, who does a lot of work on the site. Fundora, like I said, dominated and Serhii to the win. She wants Gabriela Alanis, who beat Esparza earlier this year to become unified champion. I know Alanis has 3 of the belts at 112 pounds, right? But try to convince me, why should I not think that Fundora is the best at flyweight, and it's not even close?
Well, 1, look at her record, and 2, look at how she's dispatching her opponents. She's either stopping them, or she's like beating the hell out of them, just to put it bluntly. And the other thing is that it's kind of funny when you're talking about an 112-pound person, but her physicality, on top of the fact that she actually can box, is just a problem. So I'm on the same page with you. I don't see an advantage. Like, I don't see any edge or anything that, like, I can't think of anything off the dome that she does better. And then she's fighting a person that's a little more athletic than you. So it's like that's a combination for either a stoppage or another one-sided fight, in my opinion.
5'9", Gail, flyweight. Technically very sound, very good jab, can beat you on the outside through boxing. But despite the smile that she always has on her face and the pleasant, kind, warm demeanor, she fights with a serious mean streak that, if you're a real boxing fan, you have to love. I think that she's above everyone else at 112. I think she could whip everyone at 115. I think if she wants to go down to 108, she would beat. I'll make her the favorite against all the champions right now. Super Bad Estrada, undisputed at 105, has also held a belt at 108 pounds. Many people consider her the elite in that lower weight ranks. I'm here to suggest that she has a dance partner in that lower weight area, Gail, and that's Gabriela Fundora.
To see Gabriela in person is really impressive. That girl punches like a mule. She knows how to turn her punches over. She leverages them beautifully. You know, she always has her brother and dad in the corner, and Sebastian will tell anybody who asks that he thinks she punches harder than he does, which is hilarious. She's made it pretty clear that her number one goal is to unify first at 112. That's her mission. That's her laser focus. she should be able to do it with ease. In fact, she was very disappointed she did not stop her opponent on Saturday. Partly it was because her opponent was coming down 2 divisions to take the fight. So she was naturally a bigger girl. But yeah, truthfully, it was such a beatdown. I kept thinking by about the 6th, 7th round, I was thinking, why is her corner not pulling her out? And I did think they were going to pull her both before the 9th and before the 10th rounds, because they took a good look at her. And the physician and the corner, would have definitely given her cover for that and taken the hit. Nope, they let her go out. They let her finish the fight. Some fighters just really insist they want to end the fight on their feet. There's just no point because the cards were 100 to 90 across the board. It wasn't even a question. So we'll see the unification, no doubt. Gabriela has said she can easily go down to 108, just so insane for somebody 5'9". It's crazy. She does not have to cut weight.
I mean, she weighed in this fight at 109 pounds.
Yeah, in the 112-pound division. And just like her brother, there is some pretty special DNA, some incredible metabolism on those two. They're both in tremendous shape. They don't have an ounce of fat on them. And they both admit they both eat like truck drivers. I mean, what can you say? They're just sometimes when your genetics are so in your favor. And, that can really help destine where you are supposed to be as an athlete. Clearly, Gabriela and her brother were built for this. But wait, there's a younger sister who I think is about 12. And both the older siblings say she's better than both of them. So just stand by. Maybe if boxing is in the Olympics in Los Angeles in 4 years, maybe we see the youngest Fundora. Who knows? But she's so impressive. And later, after the fight, she and the whole team came back out to see the main event. She didn't look like she'd done anything except maybe gone over to get a Starbucks or something. She didn't have a mark on her. And oh, by the way, they walked down media row and shook every single person's hand before they went to their seats to thank them for being there. That has a lot to do with her growing popularity and success. And the fact that she walked out to the song Tom Sawyer by Rush. Go figure.
Hell of a fighter she is. Sparkling personality outside the ring. Just like I mentioned, super bad. She has that it factor in terms of star potential. So does Fundora, in a bit of a different way, but still, I see no one even touching Gabriela Fundora at 112, and I agree with you, Gail. I think she becomes undisputed. It's just a matter of fact of making that fight happen. Hopefully, it'll happen either by the end of this year or early 2025. But looking long term, the fight that I want to see, if it means that Fundora has to move down to 108, which it seems like she can do based on this particular fight and where she weighed, I want to see Fundora super bad Estrada somewhere mid to late 2025. That is the
Unfortunately,
fight.
I don't think Sinicia was watching the fight because she got married Saturday night.
I didn't know that. Congratulations to her. We'll move from that card, Gail and Corey, to Albuquerque, Mexico on ESPN. Luis Alberto Lopez, kind of been of a road warrior, defending the IBF featherweight belt, fought Angelo Leo, and Lopez was having his moments in that fight, right? And close bout. Could have went either way, back and forth, but in the 10th round, Lopez, he has a tendency to fight with his hands low and his head up, and in the midst of throwing a punch, that was the case, and Leo clocked him with a left hook. he clearly did not see, because it put him down and out. One of the more dramatic finishes this year. You talk about, you want to know what the definition of a one hitter quitter is, Gail and Corey. Just harken back to that fight, because that's what Leo did. Sensational left hook, put Lopez down and out, and Leo is now, to the surprise of many, two division world champion.
All right, well, I guess I'll take it since I was sitting here just breathing. I thought that fight was an excellent fight. The ending was kind of a was actually a huge surprise because it looked so evenly matched. The Once again, this is another one of those fights. Is now it's set up another crossroads because we have one fighter that's gonna move up and on, but he's dangerous. Like who's really going to go chasing after Leo. And at the same time, you have a person that's kind of in the contender phase that got, that ate a setback. And now you're thinking like, is it really necessary to go to a rebuild, or do we just proceed as normal? So I think I think it actually created more drama than it settled when you look at that fight. And I thought that I always kind of like that drama in the sport, because when you fight fights that are like too one-sided, and that does happen a lot in the sport, and that's one thing I like about what's happening in this year's so far, is that we're actually having fights that lead to other fights or lead to other storylines.
I wonder if there will be if there's going to be a rematch. To me, I get that sense in watching how the fight transpired. It's certainly how it ended, Gail. Your reaction to just like Bohachuk and Ortiz is a candidate for fight of the year. This fight, a clear candidate for knockout of the year.
Oh yeah, it is right up there. I would say that the other two that are up there right now, and it's not even Labor Day yet, so who knows what we'll see to come. But right now, your three candidates are certainly that knockout, which was just spectacular. Ashton Silv getting crushed and knocked out, and he went down face first. Sometimes that's even worse. Um, and I wouldn't be surprised if Anthony Joshua's knockout of Francis Ngannou is also in contention by the end of the year. Honestly, all really good choices. Sometimes there's a lot of recency bias, though. It's whatever you last saw because you remember it. I always have to laugh when I see a knockout like this, and you have very high quality broadcasters, commentators, they're chatting away, and something like this happens, and the only thing they can find to say is, "Oh!" And Joe Tessitore and Chris Algieri, who was filling in for Tim Bradley this week, all they could do was roar in reaction and approval because it was just so shocking. Chris Algieri, in the lead up to the fight, talking about it, has had the benefit of watching Angelo Leo work his way back up the ladder, and Leo even thanked ProBox, the platform, for giving him the opportunity to have fights there, to get the exposure. And Algieri kept saying, "Don't sleep on Leo. Don't sleep on him." And I don't think he predicted to see this, but he was right because he has seen him up close and he has seen what he can do. It's just that Bernardo Lopez, he's a lot like Emmanuel Navarrete, and the fact that he is just so awkward and never seems to do the same things twice. He's very unorthodox, and I don't mean that he's left-handed. I mean that he just does things in sort of his own way, and so far it's worked up until Saturday when it didn't. I'm not sure we need a rematch on this one, and I don't think we need one anytime soon, but there is definitely somebody now making new noise up at the top of the featherweight division. It'll be interesting to see what happens. And already I hear the comments about, oh, yeah, well, we should have Leo fight Inoue when he moves up.
No,
everybody needs to calm
No.
down. I think
No.
that's a good idea.
No, just stop that right. Just stop that right there, y'all.
They're two different
No,
levels.
right. Right. No, 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 no. Let's move on to some news. Shout out to Mama Denise, who's checking us out live. Longtime fan, follower, and fan, excuse me, of both Pound for Pound Boxing Report and Three Kings Boxing. Gail, Corey, you both know her well.
That's her.
Uh, um,
Hey, when she's here, we know the party is in effect, and she knows her stuff, folks. She knows her stuff.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Let's get to some news here, and I mentioned that. There were news surrounding Terence Crawford. News came out earlier today that he's indeed vacated the WBO belt at 147 pounds. Of course, Crawford just coming off of the win over um, my dream off to win the WBA belt at 154. All roads, core, are just basically leaving are trending that Crawford's future is at 154. To me, him giving up the WBO belt at 147 and Sean Norman being elevated to full-time champion, all that says to me is that Teofimo Lopez, who's talking about moving to 147, what that says, that just clears, I should say, a eventual fight between Norman and Teofimo for that WBO 147-pound belt, probably by the end of this year. I said I'm Brian Norman, excuse me, not Sean Norman.
Yeah, Brian Norman Jr. for that matter.
Are you
Yeah,
there, Corey?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah,
I
I
was
was
waiting.
just saying.
What's exactly your question? I'm sorry.
It's not even a question, but the comments like all this decision, what it says to me is that it clears the path for a fight between Brian Norman and Teofimo later on this year, with Teofimo moving up to fight for that 147-pound belt.
Yeah, it looks like to your point, it's kind of good that he finally did that because I think with him holding on to the belt, it kind of stagnated the division, and also with him and Spence being gone out of the division, and Boots most likely going to 154 because he wanted to chase the Crawford fight. I kind of like seeing some of the younger fighters be able to settle the score there. Um, I would have to favor just because of the. It's kind of hard to predict Norman versus Lopez because Teofimo at his best is an A-level fighter. The problem is he can be C-level on any given night.
That's
And
right.
I think if he shows up to the ring at C-level against Brian Norman, he's going to get hurt. He may not get stopped, but he might get thoroughly beaten up if C-level Lopez does show up, which lately he's been showing up a little too much.
And never Gail fight out a fighter who has confidence and building confidence and coming off of how Norman looked in his last bout. He's going to have all the confidence in the world. And to Corey's point, if Teofimo is not on his A game, Norman can certainly beat him.
Norman can absolutely beat him. And yeah, he is a fighter that exudes confidence. He's got a manager behind him, Jolene Mazzone. She does not take fighters on unless she is supremely confident. You know, she was the one that decided to put Norman up against Santillan, and we all thought, okay, Jolene, you're pretty damn brave, but she has an eye for talent that's really unmatched and unique. She can find these diamonds in the rough. She was absolutely sure Norman Jr. would win, and boy, she was proven right. So Corey's right. Yeah, we do not ever know what version of Teofimo Lopez is going to show up on a given night. So why wouldn't Norman take his best shot at him? And, I question sometimes whether Teofimo's head's in the game. You have got to win the fight in your mind before you step up under the ropes onto the canvas every time. And he's not always able to do that. And not all fighters, no matter what their physical talents, are able to do that every time. That's what makes boxing such a challenging sport. So I say, bring it. The welterweight division is a tiny bit thin on talent right now. So Mormon Jr. has a more open lane than he might have even 3 or 4 years ago. With all those belts in play, yeah, he's got a lot of opportunities. It's his time to seize them right now. And clearly, uh, there are a lot of promoters and broadcasters who see that he has a real upside potential value with viewers. If they see him, hear what he's about, I think they're going to like him.
Teofimo is not um, a professional, mature fighter from this aspect. He fights to the level of his competition. The better the fighter, the better you see him. But when he's in against guys that people think he should beat and roll over, he comes to the ring just and he fights very very mid. I get the sense that he thinks of Norman as a guy that he doesn't have to do the most to beat. And Norman is going to come in highly motivated because people are going to view him as the underdog. Um, and as a result, he's going to give Teofimo absolute hell in that ring. Plus, Norman is the naturally bigger fighter. Plus, he can punch and box. Um, and let's face it, Teofimo doesn't like fighting on the front foot. He relies on athleticism, while Norman, the more we've seen him, the more he's developed from the skill department. Um, I think personally, and I'll go back to you, Corey. You can finish this off before we move on. I think that can spell major trouble for Teofimo.
To your point, Norman is pretty much, and Gail kind of touched on it. It's everything that Tio would not want to, that a Tio fan would not want to see. One, he's like hungry, like very hungry. Two,
He's
he
starving like Marvin, man.
yeah. Two, he's also he's a very athletic fighter. And because we haven't seen Tio at 147, he might go to 147 and the better athlete might be Norman. I mean, he's already going to be the bigger man, but he actually still might be the more athletic man overall. Teal might go in the ring. The only advantage he might have is hand speed, and Norman might have all the other check marks. Three, don't like you have to. There's the question of looking at the tape and looking at the resumes. Teal might feel confident because yes, you have a very good resume and you have some quality wins on it, but don't let the fact that you may not recognize all the names on Norman's resume sway you from looking at what you see on the tape, because what you see on that tape is real. And if it crosses his mind that, well, he could do it to those guys and doesn't think it could happen to him, I think Norman like drops him a couple of times and really beats him up. And actually, like right now, from when I'm looking at where they're at, it could obviously change during, from the time the fight sign to the time, how their training camps look. But I would go in thinking Norman would personally be my favorite, just because I think he's mentally just in the better place. And I honestly think he's the more talented guy when you're talking 147.
Yeah, like I said, this fight hasn't been announced, but the trend is that this fight is going to happen. We'll keep you abreast here on Pound for Pound Box Report is if that fight actually becomes a reality. Let's move on to some news here. Um, you mentioned how Turkey Alalshikh Gill was at the fight between Bohachuk and Ortiz, and they interviewed him. The fight was aired on the Zone. They interviewed him, and they basically disclosed what we already knew was, and that is a deal between him and Golden Boy for Riyadh season. But in the week leading up to this fight, and it was also mentioned uh, during the broadcast, uh, ongoing beef between Ali Sheik and one Canelo Alvarez. Ali Sheik ticked off that Canelo is wanting so much money for a possible fight with Benavidez or Benavidez at 168 or a fight with Bud Crawford. Canelo has said that he's not going to accept anything less than 200 million to fight Benavidez, and he wants 150 million for a fight against Bud. Alashikh balked to that notion, and then went off on Canelo during that broadcast, and he went off on Canelo on social media leading up to the fight. What do you say about this, Gail? To me, this is a battle of egos. It's not going to have an ending in sight because let's face it, Alashikh, does he really need Canelo? No. But does Canelo really need Alashikh? He doesn't need him either.
I think it actually is the reverse. Canelo doesn't need the Saudi money. Canelo wants to control his own destiny, and he has earned that right, and he did it by himself. And he feels that he should be approached respectfully and negotiated with. Now, I don't know if those of you listening have ever dealt with somebody who's wealthy, who want you to do a job, or you've got a client and they've got a lot of dough and they think that gives them the right to dictate terms. But if you can do without their money, you can make decisions independent of that dangled paycheck in front of you. That's a lot of power. The freedom to walk away. Canelo has that. That is something that Turki Alalshikh and the Saudi General Entertainment Authority cannot purchase no matter how much money they've got. And Canelo isn't the only one. Tim Tszyu has told him the same thing. He feels equally hated by Tszyu, Tank Davis. And although he hasn't said so outright, Naoya Inoue. So,
there you go. Yeah.
Look at those names. Inoue, Davis, Canelo. Those are the top guys in the sport. I mean, the only one missing out of the top five who's really said talk to the hand is Alexander Usyk. That's it. So as far as those guys are concerned, the discussion's over. It's Turki who keeps, first of all, the boxing media keeps asking him about it, so he keeps responding. But he is shocked that somebody has said no to him. He's not quite processed this yet.
Are you suggesting that he has a little bit of a fragile male ego going on here, Gail?
Oh, no, I don't think it's that at all. I think it's a rich person's ego is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not even his money.
I stand corrected. You're right.
It's his government's money. It's his royal family's money. But he's still the steward of that money. All of us have dealt with somebody like this in our travels, right? On our own small personal basis. And when you have the ability to walk away and say no because you do not need that money for whatever reason, you don't want the strings attached, you can afford to walk away. You know, Canelo does not need the money. He has generational wealth. His children will not be able to spend the amount of money he's earned. He sticks around in boxing because he loves it. The day he decides he's done, he's done. He has 65 fights. I mean, what more do we really want from him? He's charting his own path. Tim Tszyu, you know, he is a throwback in so many ways. And he has a massive audience in Australia, a growing fan base here who just likes what he's about, no nonsense kind of guy. Inoue can make all the money he needs to without leaving Japan. He has absolutely no need of Saudi Arabia. And Davis is the same. More power to him. Good for them. And I wouldn't be too surprised if they dig in even deeper after seeing how things played out in Los Angeles with the first Saudi card. You know, throwing money at an event, throwing the kitchen sink at it, cramming in car giveaways and concerts and celebrities. You know, there's a point where an event is just simply overkill. You know, it's like going to a restaurant where the food is great, you eat too much, and you just sort of ruin the experience. That's what it was like in Los Angeles. And if rumors, and they're only rumors, about the pay-per-view numbers are correct, that fight was not built to make money. The Saudi General Entertainment Authority does not need to make a profit. That's not what these investments are about. They're in something very different. The outcome has nothing to do with making money on gate or pay-per-views. But it's also telling that despite everything you were told, it was not a sellout. It was not a sellout. It did not pass the eye test. And it was certainly not a sellout when a substantial number of the crowd left after the Isaac Cruz Jose Valenzuela fight, and even more people left after the Eminem concert. It was maybe a 2/3, 60% house at best when Crawford and Madrimov fought. So the Saudis really need to rethink their approach, unless they really are in it simply for the marketing objectives. And truly, that is what this is really about. It is not about boxing.
I think there are two things that's coming out of this, Corey. From Canelo's side, listen, we would all want to be in a position where we have that kind of wealth and financial freedom to make decisions and basically to do what you want. You don't have to kowtow to anyone. But in a boxing context, excuse me, where does that lead in terms of the fights that we want to see? And we all know the fights that we want to see when it comes to Canelo, either Crawford moving up, or the fight we really want is one with Benavidez, right? And Canelo is making his demands and he's sticking to it. He has the right to do so. On the other hand, when it comes to Alashikh, he's made a big splash in the last 2-3 years, but the more he's making inroads into the sport and dealing with these fighters, he's finding out that they're not going to bend at the knee for him, and that he's going to have to do some more work, and maybe his ego has taken a hit, and as time moves on, he's going to have to make some adjustments as well. So speak to those issues when it comes to Canelo and what he's demanding, as well as some of the barriers that Alashikh is now facing.
So I'll start off with the Canelo thing first. Canelo is pretty much moved how he's wanted to move for years. I mean, think about it. After he fought Floyd, let's talk about, like, he had what was called Canelo weight, where he's fighting at 155 and had no belts. Then the first Gennady Golovkin negotiations, he wanted to fight at 155. Gennady said no. Then when they finally did agree, say, hey, we'll fight at 160, Canelo ends up vacating his title on the grounds that he was not going to give him the 30% that, had the fight gone to purse bid, would have been what he had to pay him. He felt that he did not want to pay him that. So he stalled that fight out for another almost 2 years past then. And if we look at what he did, he moved up, fought a couple of fights at 160. Then he moved back down and fought Liam Smith for a title at 154. Then he also fought Amir Khan at 154. So Canelo has a history, and I could have kept going, but a history of doing what he wants. And truth be told, when I think he felt like how Bivol felt in the ring, and he wasn't comfortable with that, and even though it'd be slightly smaller, you'd be at 168, he's thinking, like, I'm going to fight a guy that's probably going to be a little stronger than Bivol. Bivol and Benavidez actually have sparred quite a bit, and they both, have a lot of respect for each other. So Canelo's thinking, I didn't even do well with Bivol, and I'm going to fight a guy that's going to be a little bigger than him. So if he's going to put his neck out there like that, he's like, yeah, I'm going to get paid for it. And then as far as the Crawford fight, I think, and it's kind of wild because he did bring up Amir Khan for that silly fight. And yes, I'm calling that fight silly. It's very interesting that he don't want no action with the Crawford fight. Now, I don't think it's necessarily being scared of him, but I think the risk of it, and I kind of actually am not one of the people that's really high on the Crawford fight. If he doesn't fight Benavidez, I would be okay with the Crawford fight, but I'm not a fan of fights where only one guy can lose. Canelo would win minimally because let's say you do win, people are going, well, y'all are like 3 weight classes apart. Big deal. And if you mess around and lose, it's great for Crawford, but your marketability long term is hurt. And let's keep it a buck. Most of what we saw Floyd do to Canelo, and most of what we saw Lara do to Canelo, what in those skill sets doesn't Crawford have? It could be a major problem. So when he looks at that's not really appealing, which is why he's asking for crazy money to do it. I think you're better off biting the bullet and taking the Benavidez fight because that's actually the fight you should be fighting, and he's in your weight division. But I think that's where he is with that. Then on the Turki Ali, I'm going to just say this. We've seen people with big money come in and think that they can run the sport of boxing. And the Saudis as a group, also, let's keep in mind, they recently were able to pretty much take over the PGA. Think about PGA events are now pretty much all sponsored by them. And boxing kind of has a management structure that if you're on the outside looking in, it's messy at best. And it looks like it's in total disarray. But there's political relationships that work within boxing that actually, when you start to peel back the onion, it's actually more solid or more of a solid mass of something to deal with than what it was with the PGA. And what they're going to find out is that there's people that they don't necessarily have to go to you to get any. They don't need you for anything. So unless you flat out can either give them something they want, and they're going to want more than money, they're just going to tell you no. And I think Turkey's starting to find that out. Like Canelo can go to anybody. He can go to DAZN. He can go to Sky Sports. He can go to PBC. He can go wherever. He can even go talk to Bob Arum at Top Rank, say, hey, I want to fight that guy. They'll move heaven and earth to do it on the terms he wants. So if I can walk into any office and get pretty much any deal I want done, I'm not married to any organization. Like there was that interview that Canelo did last week when he talked to Sway, and he was saying, like, he was actually giving a breakdown of what percentages he gets paid off of each of the revenue streams in a boxing match. He gets 80% of the concessions. Other than
that's major, man. For those who do not know, that is major. That's unprecedented.
Yeah. So other than Floyd, when was the last time you ever heard somebody hop in front of a camera and say something like that? Then he was talking about like his percentage of the network money. Like normally a network's take on a fight, because they also pay some of the overhead, relatively comes out to be 35%. If you're a network, you deal with him, you only get 20. So he's like he operates on a whole different planet. So unless you dropping the bag off and paying the guarantee before he even walks through the door, it is what it is. And like, because people talk about like some of Canelo's fights haven't been the biggest pay-per-view numbers as of late. He doesn't care because he's been such a stalwart in those numbers. And even in this climate, he's still the most consistent guy in an inconsistent time or an uncertain time. That he's your best bet at a for sure.
Right. It doesn't matter when it comes to the pay-per-view numbers. You getting the bulk of that. You getting the bulk of the live gate and everything afterwards.
Exactly. He's basically like the last hope. He's like Luke Skywalker out there. Like he literally is like the only hope. So anytime he decides he'll put a pen to paper and talk about a fight, that's why he can kind of talk about opponents we don't like.
And it's the same thing with Inoue. Well, not the same thing, but the same thing in terms of power dynamic with Inoue. He really does not need that top rank deal. He just did it for exposure purposes. He's making so much money fighting in Japan where in case Ali doesn't know, I'm not saying that Japan has that kind of money that Ali has supporting him, but it ain't far off, right?
Or even, yeah,
And
all right. To your case in point, to anyway, sorry to interrupt. To anyway, he once again he has what you call in business a natural market. His natural
right,
market is a whole country, and the Inoue phenomenon. The only thing you could compare it to, he would literally be what Mike Tyson was in his era. Like in Japan, that like he's literally their version of Mike Tyson. Whereas everybody knows who he is, and his nickname is the baddest man on the planet. But
Inoue could fight 50,000 fans in Japan, turn around, fight for 40, 50,000 in Dodger Stadium. How can Alex can compete with that? He don't need him either.
yep.
I see Daniel has joined us. Let him get him into this discussion. Open your mic up, Daniel.
All right, y'all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. StreamYard, fix your thing when messing with people's mobile data. But after that, this first, let me just say that I enjoy watching Canelo verbally tell the blood money mark, where to shove his blood money at, with a rusty screwdriver. In in all sense of the word, because he can. That's the main problem. That's right. He can. He really doesn't need it. You guys broke down the figures. He doesn't need to go to Turkey and just basically say, I want your money. He'll get that money regardless who he fights. Which is, yeah, kind of disgusting because now we have to do it Berlanga of all people when it should be Benavidez. But at the end of the day, it's starting to show Turkey because every once in a while it happens, whether it's the Mafia, whether it's Don King, Bob, Oscar, Floyd, Eddie was the latest one until Turkey, that they think they could monopolize the sport. And you're realizing now that this is a sport where the labor actually has a bit of power. And they're going to make sure to use that. And Canelo's doing that very, very effectively. And not only that, he's also showing a roadmap because not only him, you mentioned it, not only him. Anyway, doesn't that money? Tank of all people said, I'm not playing by your games.
I mean, listen, I have my issues with Tank in terms of in the ring,
Yeah,
and him being overhyped, but outside the ring, you can't knock him from business acumen. I mean, he
yeah,
got that $235 million deal basically on his own, so I can't take that away from him.
yeah, and that's the main thing. I think what happened was Turkey saw how the heavyweight picture was looking at, and probably talked to Fury, and because of Fury's connections, he probably figured he could essentially play matchmaker for the entire sport. And now he's realizing, no, there's people that are bigger than you that are willing to tell you where to go. If they feel like it, because they can make everything else. And that's why like Turkey kind of did his whole wannabe Drake passive aggressive statement afterwards, saying, "Oh, that Crawford fight, that's I'm no longer interested in that." When everybody knows he'll jump at the chance to try to make that fight, even though that fight would be only interesting, but it just worries me for Bud to jump that much for a fight. Not walking around wait for a fight, but it shows the dynamic. It shows that there are players that are willing to tell you to say no, even to blood money, and that's always a good thing.
Read comments here in the chat. Emma, who's an avid soccer fan, has talked about commenting about how soccer how Saudi money has impacted his beloved sport of soccer as well, and how it could affect sports in general. Yeah, this sport, the way it's set up, the way it's ran, inside and out, the powers, the real powers that be, are not going to let one man just come in and run everything. It's just not going to happen. There will be a rebellion, and Turkey is dealing with that now in terms of Canelo. To Corey's point, uh, let's face it, Canelo has been a diva for years. Um, and at this stage of his career, he's not going to kowtow to anyone. He wants basically the biggest buck for whatever whenever he steps in the ring, and that's what we are seeing now. And he's going to stand 10 toes down on that, whether um, we like it or not. Couple more news stories here. Let's go to Shakur Stevenson, um, who's made plenty of news, as much on social media or anything, arguing back and forth with fighters. Well, um, it looks like Daniel Stevenson is going to fight William Zepeda later on this year. The fight's being negotiated, from my understanding. Things are close to being finalized. Um, this is a fight I'm not mad at. If Shakur is not going to fight Tank, uh, Zepeda is basically his best option. I believe he's number one across the board in Zepeda. I think it makes for a very, very good fight. And if Stevenson not just wins, but performs well and is impressive in doing so, it'll kind of help restore what has been his damaged reputation to a lot of boxing fans.
Now, as much as we
Yes.
talked about, oh, sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, Zepeda is number one contender in all four sanctioning bodies. You could not avoid this guy without paying him money. And quite frankly, this is a situation where Shakur needs Zepeda more than Zepeda needs Shakur in any ways because of that multitude of options that Zepeda has. Because the fighting style that Zepeda has, where he's going to come forward, he's willing to eat shots and going to land his, and is going to be about work rate, is a fighting style that is tailor made to show off Shakur's skill, especially when it comes to landing shots and countering. So this is a real good situation now. It's going to be a situation where it's a one fight deal with Golden Boy. It's going to be a situation where Shakur's just being his own free agent still, or is there another player in hand? Because unfortunately, Golden Boy is one of the promotions that is willing to take the blood money. We just have to see where the money comes from. If it's finalized, keyword finalized, then we have a really, really decent fight in our hands. I would still give Shakur the upper hand, but I've come to learn not to count out William Zepeda. And when it comes to fights, it will be entertaining.
Oh, you were going to say something, Gail?
Yeah, I think Stevenson knows that he has to resurrect his image. You know, he has had performances that were not crowd pleasing. And make no mistake, he has seen some of the crowd pleasing fights. Say what you will about Golden Boy, but they tend to, because of the fighters they work with, and they're very West Coast Mexican and Mexican American skewed, they do put on entertaining fights. Their guys aren't always at the highest level, but I defy you to sit even at a Golden Boy club show, which they still do plenty, and by the way, still make money at that level. And these guys are prospects and they're locals. And I'll tell you, when they are out in the high desert of California at Fantasy Springs, just outside of Indio, Palm Springs area, they sell out every single show and the fans are there from the opening bell. So they get it. That's what Shakur lacks. What he can get back is in a fight against Zepeda showing what he's made of, if he's willing to do it. And if the money is right, and the Saudi money will be right, then he'll be willing to take the risk. In boxing, unless you're one of these guys we've talked about who could say no to big money, it's always risk versus reward. Always. If there's not enough money to take the risk of losing your stature, you say no. In this case, the Saudi money is so big for these guys. I mean, it's for many of them life changing. They are willing to risk an undefeated record, their reputation, their belt, because the payday is so huge. And in Shakur's case, it's not just the money, it is restore my good name, put some respect on my name, and a win over Zepeda would get him that. And it is going to be a very interesting style matchup. Is Zepeda going to finally be the one to penetrate that vaunted defense that everybody likes to talk about with Stevenson? There's nobody like Zepeda in boxing right now who's just an absolute buzzsaw. He has stepped in where guys like a prime Roman Gonzalez used to sit. So I think it's a very interesting fight. Truthfully, of the fights Turki Alalshikh would like to make, that's the one that interests me the most.
Last word on this, Core.
Yeah, I really like that. I like that fight a lot between Zepeda and Shakur. The biggest challenge I think is like for Shakur is could he actually style on Zepeda? I think like boxing skill wise on paper, yeah, there's a possibility he could do that. But just as Gail and Daniel pointed out, Zepeda does present a level of physicality and danger that actually would force the fight to be interesting somehow. Because when you get into the later rounds, if Zepeda's still going, if Shakur fades a little bit, does Zepeda catch him, and how does Shakur react to it? So I think for like as they say, there's fights that are truth serum fights. It has the possibility of being a truth serum fight. So it's high on my list of fights I would like to see also.
I agree with you, Corey, that he has the potential, Shakur, to style on him. But if he if Zepeda is able to cut off the ring with his work rate and his power, Shakur could be in trouble. Last word on this. Last news topic. I didn't put this in the docket, but it looks like Emmanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez are going to fight a rematch in December. They fought earlier. They fought previously with Navarrete winning pretty comfortably over Valdez. Navarrete is coming off of a loss at 135. Um, the question I have for everyone here: what can really change in a rematch?
Well, a lot can change in the rematch. You know, they've both been through quite a few more fights. Navarrete has lost badly in his last fight. Valdez, has fought his way back after his losses. So they both have a chip on their shoulder. They both feel like they've got something to prove. Uh, and it is going to be a bit like those fights I just talked about, where Golden Boy puts together action fighters, and it doesn't really matter what level they're at or whether they have a belt. They're just wildly entertaining fights. And sometimes that's the right thing for a promoter to do. It's not worry so much about, is this guy number one, or he's got a belt, or so-and-so's being positioned or moving up. Just put the entertainment in front of the people, and they will be back for more.
Indeed, indeed. Let's move on to preview a fight, and I'm gonna say it right now. On paper, I don't know how competitive this is going to be. As Christian Mbilli, who's top ranked fighter at 168 pound, fighting former world title challenger at middleweight, Sergey Derevyanchenko. The reason, Gail, Corey, and Daniel, I wonder how competitive this will be is because the fact that Mbilli is the naturally bigger guy and Derevyanchenko is the significantly older guy. Can Mbilli be hit? Is defense his strong suit? Oh, hell no. But I don't. Again, how much does Derevyanchenko have left in the tank? If he doesn't, he could get steamrolled here. That's my fear.
I, I don't think you'll get steamrolled. Derevyanchenko is one of these tough guys, again, like his countryman Bohachuk. He is tough. He is hard to stop. Yes, he loses fights, but he gives a good effort. He will test anybody at any level, and that's why, despite losses, he keeps being brought back. Now, I will say, after the Munguia fight, at 37 years old, I told myself, God, I really would like to see Sergiy retire. Could he please just retire? Well, apparently not. So we'll see what he's got against a power puncher who's just a power machine like Mbilli. And what's interesting is I don't think Mbilli has the broader range of skills, even of somebody like Jaime Munguia, who is just a come forward, bang it out, doesn't have a tremendous amount of defense fighter. I think Mbilli might have even less, but his power appears to be real. So that's the danger. The truth is, though, a fighter like Derevyanchenko takes less damage from the kind of one-hitter quitter Leo leveraged over Lopez than the complete beating over 12 rounds that Ortiz Jr. gave Bohachuk. So if the medical authorities in Canada cleared this fight, well, there it is. And there's no denying it will be extremely entertaining to watch.
Your thoughts, Corey?
You always got to be careful historically when you have those old veteran fights put in with like young physical type guys, because the one thing is boxing is with a vet versus like a young up and comer. A young up and comer will usually have more trouble with power because they'll make a technically unsound mistake because they've been able to overpower people. Then on the flip side, you'll see random fights where an old guy really hangs out with a young bull just because they simply know how to fight. And that there's a possibility of that in this fight. I'm not high on that possibility at all, but it could happen. Like, let's look historically, not too long ago, you had Eric Morales dealing with Marcos Maidana. Nobody thought that he would survive that after we saw the wars that Eric Morales was in. I had another fight off the top of my head that I was thinking of where you saw an older guy sitting there hanging with a younger guy. Or I'll go even further back, like when Joaquin Alcine beat David Lemieux. Who'd have thought that would happen? Or
excellent point.
Like that. There's lots of fights that spot the landscape every year where an old guy hangs out with a young guy. And it's not that he can repeatedly do it. Usually if they end up rematching, it goes younger guy. But usually with an older guy, the one thing they have is they have technical know-how. And if you don't have a well-rounded skill set, or you don't have some kind of diversity to your skills, they will pull it out of you. And that can happen here because Derevyanchenko, if there's one thing, he's just a guy that knows how to handle himself. You look at all his biggest fights, even though there were losses, were people really putting hands on him like that? Not really.
Last word on this, Daniel, before we sign off.
This is going to be, to me, the test to see if Mbilli can handle a more defensive style, because as Joe mentioned, Corey mentioned, it's a power puncher, young power puncher, but there's always a danger of that old vet. I have another good example that'd be pretty good. The Marquez fight versus Diaz. At that point, Marquez was still young, but he's been through wars himself at that point. And he saw how he hung in there. So there's always that possibility. And with Derevyanchenko, it's interesting. It's an interesting fight to me because he's really a really stocky, compact guy for a middleweight. and not going up one more division. This is going to be a test to see where he can use that compact size probably to more his advantage, trying to land punches in angles that he can't. Other fighters really can't. We have to see. I think Mbilli probably though is going to take a little bit of the job because this kid is hungry. This kid looks to want to make a statement.
And I think we'll end things on that note. I really want to thank those in the YouTube chat, the live chat, for their comments. Um, be it Mama Denise, be it Amma. Appreciate it. If you're not done so, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you subscribe, you'll get notifications for any and all future episodes of Pound for Pound Box Report. And hit that like button helps the overall algorithm. I'll go around the panel here. We begin the show with ladies first. In the show with ladies first, Gail from nyfights.com. For folks who want to talk boxing with you, let the folks know where they can find you.
It's real easy. It's right there. nyfights.com is where you can find my material. And I am all over the interwebs, mainly under my business is PR Pro San Diego.
I go to you, Corey, contributor for ThreeKingsBoxing.com. For folks who want to talk the sweet science, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Primarily, you can find me on the Three Kings Facebook page. You just see me by name, Corey Cunningham. Other than that, I don't have any other platforms that I'm on right now.
And for those who want to talk, I think you will involve with this when it comes to Three Kings Boxing betting league. For those who are interested in wagering on have some friendly wagering and some fun talk about box. Could you give some insight on the Three Kings Boxing betting wagering thing that's happening right now?
Yes, we do have a site. You can actually click into it through the Facebook page, and it'll direct you to the betting website. The first cutoff was on August 3rd. After this one, there will be another one coming up after this round plays out.
Yeah, so far my bets have been piss poor to say the least. I'm on the lower end of the tier when it comes to the point systems and whatnot, but I'm gonna pick it up. I'll go to last but certainly not least, Daniel from Ford Boxing News and the Inscriber. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to Miami Heat and Bam out of bio. The cat's out the bag now in terms of who he is dating. One Asia Wilson. Anyway, for those who want to talk boxing, Miami Heat, NBA, as well as pro wrestling, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yeah. You can find me, folks, everywhere. Twitter, Threads. Yeah. Blue Sky and I have Mastodon. Still the same handles. RAWKUZ99. Definitely catch me on there. Yeah. Bam is winning, man. Bam is winning that life and still proving that Gobert's a fraud when it comes to Defensive Player of the Year.
For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me, you know what it is. On Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. I call it Twitter because I refuse to call it X, especially from what I hear, that fiasco of an interview between Elon and 45, or as I affectionately call him, the Mango Menace. For those who want to check out all things Pound for Pound Box Report on these Twitter streets, you can check that out. P4P Boxing RPT. Let me repeat that again. For those who want to follow Pound for Pound Box Report on Twitter, P4P Boxing RPT. Because the sport is going to be light in terms of significant bouts over the next couple of weeks, and we've been going at it weekly for a while now. What I may do is take the next week off and give everybody, Gail, Daniel, certainly some rest. So that's what I'm thinking in my head. That's likely going to be the case. You will not see an episode next week. Going to take a week off to give everybody some time to rest and reset. Again, I want to thank Gail. I want to thank Corey. I want to thank Daniel. I want to thank everybody in the chat for their comments and questions. For Gail, somebody was going to say something.
I was just gonna say thank you.
Oh, no problem, no problem, Corey. As I said a few weeks back, the plan when it comes to future episodes of Pound for Pound Box Report is to have someone from Three Kings Boxing, one of the contributors, be it Corey, be it Jay, be it Lord Zoe, rotating here on a weekly basis. So I want to thank you, Corey, and sure that you're going to be back on very, very soon. So for Gail of nyfights.com, for Corey, contributor for threekingsboxing.com, for Daniel of 4 Boxing News, and the inscriber, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 456 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.